How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your July 2019 horoscope for Libra, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and watching and liking and sharing and commenting on my videos. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. I am sending you a ton of positive energy this month because although this month comes with a lot of heavy challenges, there is a lot of room and opportunity for growth in this moment that can really spurt up some really amazing things as we move on into August and September. So I'd like to start by saying this month may be pretty intense, but it's gonna get good. So starting this month off on July 1st, we have Mars entering Leo, and this is going into your guys' 11th house. Now, Mars has been in Cancer and in your 10th house for the past couple weeks, and of course it's been in its fall, so it's been kind of irritating, and you could have been having not necessarily problems always in the workplace. The 10th house does rule your career, does rule your public image and things like that, but the 10th house is also just kind of like life itself. It's up in top of the sky, everyone can see it. There's issues going on with your general sense of what's going on that everyone can see and what's on the big picture. Now, Mars is moving out of Cancer and going into your 11th house and going into Leo. And Mars, of course, is this planet of our actions, our drive, our intentions, how we can be angry and frustrated. It's hot, it severs, it cuts, it's a malefic. But at the same time, Mars is very energetic. Mars is trying to get things done, and Mars is trying to, handle things and adapt and improvise and overcome. Now, Mars going into Leo, though, is Mars acting very proudly at times, sometimes egotistical, but Mars acting in Leo is also trying to do what's more integral for your sense of self, as well as acting more authentically and within more of your own natural expression. The only problem is, as Mars is going into Leo, it is going into your 11th house, and the 11th house is all about your friendships, your social groups, bigger groups of people that aren't one-on-one relationships or like your siblings or your neighbors. It's like bigger groups of people and networks and stuff like that. And as Mars goes into Leo and goes into your 11th house, you may be seeing some problems happening in your friendships or in your social groups or if you're in any, whatever kind of network that you're in. And as Mars goes through your 11th house, this is really about acting out of integrity and out of authenticity, but not acting out of anger and acting out of, loyalty and respect. Now, the next day on July 2nd is when we start eclipse season. We're finally back at it. We've been talking about this since January. Now, the eclipses that we're having is the first one is the solar eclipse in Cancer. This is technically the new moon, but it's an eclipse, so don't count. But this new moon, this eclipse is happening in your 10th house. Now, as I'm sure you've seen with the North Node transiting your 10th house and with the eclipses that we had back in January bringing up stuff, now we're starting to see a little bit more results of what came up for you in January during the lunar eclipse. Now, as we move on to this eclipse, the solar eclipse is where a new moon is supposed to be focusing on one area and the light's getting cut out of it. So while this is happening in your 10th house, this is definitely a heightened energy, a heightened look at what's going on in this area of your life. And during this eclipse, this is definitely a time of resetting those intentions, getting a little bit more clear, but also not acting out of haste because there's some big things that are going to be happening in your 10th house during this eclipse cycle. Then on July 3rd, we're going to have Venus enter Cancer. Now, Venus has been in Gemini in your 9th house for a couple weeks where she was opening up your mind to bigger possibilities, having you question more of your beliefs and maybe seeking out more understanding. Venus is now going into the sign of Cancer where she wants to value the sentimental. She puts a lot of emphasis on the essential things that matter in life. And as Venus goes into Cancer where this is about nurturing, this is about taking care of and valuing that and bringing beauty to it, she's going into your 10th house of your career, of bigger life stuff, up in the public, up in the air. And as Venus goes through your 10th house and probably goes over your midheaven more than likely, this is bringing a lot more positive implications into this area of your life. Venus is looking to take care of you. Venus is wanting you to indulge. Venus is wanting to protect and nurture you. And as she goes through your 10th house, while although the eclipses are happening there, and this is in the middle of that, this is, bringing more value and more appreciation and more taking care of in that area. Then a few days later, on July 8th, we have Mercury stationing retrograde. And this is a pretty big deal because Mercury is now in your 11th house in Leo. It stations retrograde. Mars will conjoin it the next day, and I did a whole video about that, so make sure you check it out. However, as Mercury stations retrograde in Leo, you may find yourself in a miscommunication within the context of your friends or the group of people that you surround yourself with quite often, or any type of big group of people. You may find your friends have a miscommunication towards you, or you miscommunicate towards your friends. Either way, Mars conjoining Mercury during this time as well is bringing some irritation to that. So definitely expect some words to be thrown back and forth with your professional group, your friends, any type of bigger area, things like that. Then, of course, about a week later, on July 16th, we have the last eclipse. Then we're out of eclipse season. It'll be a weird 2 weeks in between. But this is the lunar eclipse happening in Capricorn. And this one's a pretty big deal. This one's pretty gnarly, not going to lie. But when you have a full moon, you're lighting up an axis and a dynamic and getting a better sense of things. Now, when you have an eclipse, though, of course, that light's getting cut out a little bit more. And this eclipse is happening in Capricorn. The moon will be in Capricorn along with Saturn, South Node, Pluto, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen already, as that's been transiting your fourth house of your family and your home life and where you center yourself and where you're living and your parents. You've probably seen Saturn, Pluto, South Node do something to that area. And this eclipse happening right here is highlighting this area, bringing an emphasis to it, and kind of saying what needs to be walked away from in a sense. Where are you realizing what structures or what plans or what systems of operations you've had in place in this area don't work any longer, and where is it time to start taking some change to that? Also, on July 16th, we're going to have Venus oppose Saturn at this time on the eclipse. And this is pretty important because as Venus is wanting to encourage you to focus on the things that you need within your career, Saturn is saying you've got some responsibilities to handle in your home life first before you can do that. But the exciting news is after that eclipse, the next day on July 17th, we have Venus conjoining the North Node. And so even though Venus may get told no from Saturn at this point, the next day when Venus conjoins the North Node, I think this has a lot more to do about having more clarity about what direction you're trying to go in and what addressing and valuing and protecting your needs and putting more emphasis into that and more beauty and seeing the value in that. That's going to become a lot more clear, and that urge and that desire for that is going to only become stronger. Then 2 days later, on July 19th, we have Mercury retrogressing back into Cancer and into your 10th house. So while Mercury stationed retrograde in your 11th house, and the 11th house can still deal with career possibilities as well, same thing with the 9th house. However, as Mercury leaves your 11th house of friendships, retrogresses back into Cancer into your 10th house. This is a lot to do with, hey, not only what communication problems could you be having within the context of your friendships, but what mindset shift are you having? And with that mindset shift, as Mercury retrogresses back into Cancer, this is about addressing on the bigger level on what it comes down to with your life, with your career, with what you're doing with yourself, what needs need to be met and addressed there to where you can be the person you need to be in those social groups. So, of course, 2 days later on July 21st, that's when we have Mercury going Cazimi with the sun. It's getting purified by fire. It's getting all of the information that it needs. This is when Mercury is right in between the Earth and the sun. And this is also a big deal as well, because as Mercury goes back into Cancer and starts to realize more of what it needs on a bigger level, on a more foundational level, Mercury gets clarified by the sun of what exactly addressing and communicating those needs are, and where do you need to protect yourself with what your communication and what you say and what you think, and what mindset change do you need to have about yourself in order to ensure those results. Then a few days later on July 23rd, that's when we have the sun entering Leo and it's going into your 11th house. It is now Leo season. Hooray, you should be happy, but as the sun goes into Leo into your 11th house, this is of course bringing more light and attention to this area. The sun is now in its domicile, so you may be feeling a lot more connected with your friendships. You may be feeling a lot more, the light and the attention is on that area for you, so that's going to be more of a bigger deal after July 23rd. But then the next day, we have Mercury conjoining Venus, and I hit on this a lot in the Mercury retrograde video, but I do think that this is pretty important only because Mercury was conjoining Mars, and it was pretty gnarly, and then it goes Cazimi, gets all this information. While Mercury is in Cancer, and it's still looking to understand what's right, what's wrong, what it needs to protect and nurture versus what it needs to defend from, it gets kind of caught in the arms of Venus in Cancer, and Venus in Cancer is like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel this way. The big thing is while Venus is in Cancer in your 10th house and as Mercury conjoins Venus, this is really going like, I understand what my needs are and what I want to protect, but it's because I'm valuing something different. I'm valuing something that is essential and sentimental to my life. And to, this definitely involves your career and what you're kind of doing with that. This could be your workplace. This could be your bosses. This could just be on a bigger life scale of stuff. However, this is what to look for. Then a few days later, on July 28th, we have Venus entering Leo, and she'll be going into your 11th house, doing her best to make help of that friend situation that you had going on during the Mercury retrograde. As Venus goes into Leo, she's going from being a little bit more conservative and protective and empathetic to going, hey, this is who I am, this is what I love, this is what I'm going to express, and I'm going to sing it out loud for everyone to hear. As Venus goes into Leo, this is definitely a time of bringing value and bringing value through light and attention. And this is going into your 11th house of your friendships, of your social groups. And this is connecting you more to a more authentic, a more lit up friendship and group. And I'm not saying you're going to completely change those things. However, you may be feeling a better emphasis on your friends once Venus goes into Leo. And then, of course, on July 31st, that's when we have the new moon in Leo, and that's how we're ending the month off. There's a lot going on in your 11th house after this. There'll be Mars, Sun, Moon, Venus. Later on, Mercury will enter Leo again. So there's a lot of attention and focus on what you're doing with other people, what your involvement is. The 11th house is also humanitarian stuff and giving back. It's, not only professional groups, social groups, personal stuff. As long as there's a group of people that are there for a common good, that's what to look for. And as we end July off with this new moon, I think this is really looking at and seeing a different expression inside of yourself and a better identity and within the context of this group of people. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.